Hey everybody, welcome back to the Electronic Gaming Mostly podcast. I'm Seeker127,
Hey, the
and I
gambler.
keep finding this dude turning up on street corners. I throw him onto this podcast.
Well, nobody wants me here, but I keep coming around. I'm like that guy that shows up at the door knocking on the door. Like, I brought coffee.
Thanks for
Jesus
the
Christ.
coffee, but fuck off.
Let him in. Let him in. I guess.
But yeah, this week was, pretty slow for news, but we got a few things.
There's nothing going on, man. It's the week. It's the calm before the storm.
Yeah, it's a slow burn. So we're playing some slow burn games like Divinity Original Sin 2. I dipped into Battlefield 1 once or
Emphasis on
twice.
slow.
Yeah.
You fucking
That
play
game
that
will
game
light your
for
time on
6 to
fire.
8 hours. You play a game for 8 hours. Well, we start playing that game at 9 p.m. last
Yeah.
night. And then it was like 6 in the morning, and we had what? We
Made it
had
halfway through Act 2. Second half of Act 2 into Act
we
3.
popped off the end of
Or no, Act 3
Dust.
into Act 4. Whatever.
Well,
we
we
did
did
we
the
did all of the
Nameless
Nameless
Isle.
Isle. But that's the shortest act.
Yeah. It's like you play that game, you boot up that game, you open it up, you have a great time, you do shit, you get 3 quests done, and it's like 18 hours have passed.
Yep.
And you're like, what the fuck? Where'd the time
Well,
go?
the combat takes a long time. You get really zoned in during the combat sections, but it's all turn-based.
Well, it's enjoyable too. That's what's incredible is you pass that much time and you still somehow enjoy it. Weird.
No,
Doesn't feel that
it's the
repetitive
leveling. It's much more rewarding than WoW's leveling system.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the factual process of it that other RPG developers don't tend to understand these days is every time you level up, you get something, and that's what's exciting. You see that bar go up, and it gets closer, and you're like, "Ooh, we're gonna level. Let's go do this quest." It incentivizes you to, do shit. Great,
Yeah,
great
especially
concept.
this because there's only a finite amount of XP in this game. There's only so many quests to do and enemies to kill.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there's
they seem to
no
balance that
grinding
out.
anything out.
They seem to have balanced that pretty solidly in terms of, when we first played it. Granted, we weren't doing lone wolf, but uh, it felt really grueling. Like we always felt like we were under leveled for everything we were doing and couldn't get enough XP. And we're playing on the same difficulty, but with lone wolf, and it just feels like there's way more experience to go around.
Well, you don't need as much support when you're doing Lone Wolf. It's just more direct shit. And that's great because I got that one wombo combo that kills fucking everything in one hit.
Yeah, that's currently overpowered. We'll see how long it stays that way. Probably forever. I don't know. It's pretty
I like it.
ridiculous. It's pretty crazy.
So if you haven't played Divinity Original Sin 2 yet, go get it because we're going to be talking about it. And if you haven't played it, you're not going to know what the fuck we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll throw out a spoiler alert before. I mean, maybe we just start with that right now, and then why fuck
And
it?
I think we already have.
Already got on. Like, spoiler alert. Well, we probably won't talk about the story too much, right? I mean, the story is okay. It's not.
The story gets kind of convoluted towards the end.
Well, this is a game that comes from a series of games that this indie dev has made.
Well,
Pretty
I
sure
think
they're
they only
they've
made
been an indie developer.
the first Divinity Original Sin. The ones before that, the old games, I don't think they made those.
Well, okay, yeah. So it's not the same developers, but well, maybe it's got like one guy in there that started them or something. I don't know, or maybe they got a hold of the rights or something. Maybe it's like a Witcher situation where they got some rights that were previously owned by other people. Witcher was like based on a book, and they put that shit out. This game has got a whole series of games that are in the classic RPG concept of like Elder Scrolls, and yeah, there's like this long-winded lore behind it that's a little
Yeah,
convoluted if you
it's
jump into
okay.
Divinity Original Sin 2 without playing the other one. But it's not handholdy, and at the same time it's not super difficult to understand what's happening. You got the elves are basically tree
It's
people
just
in
hard
this
to keep
game.
all the different storylines straight because your
It's
character will react to
interesting.
shit that like you don't remember as if you've you know
Yeah.
as if you've encountered it and you
Well,
should remember.
that's people have talked about that those are bugs that exist as well. Like sometimes the game has spoiled things for people and it's actually I don't know if this is the original version, but the definitive edition, which is obviously the one you should own, though, is it has spoil. Some people have reported it spoiling things where like they had a party member start talking about something they hadn't even done, but it was their, they had played through the game before, so they knew that it was something that was coming up.
Yeah, see,
And
but
then
I would never
so
know that that's a spoiler. I would just assume that it's something I overlooked in a book or
well,
some
in
shit.
RPGs you don't really follow story that much, right? Like you like The Witcher for its combat, not really its story, right?
Actually, I mean, the story's pretty good in The Witcher. At least The Witcher
Yeah, but I
3.
mean, you don't. Do you like delve into the lore of it, like really deep into the background, like the world creation and all that shit? Like, I mean, you
Not
understand
really,
this.
but probably more than Divinity I did, yeah.
You understand the story of like Warcraft, for example, but you don't follow it through all the way into all the deep corners of all the bullshit they've come out with. It's like watching Lord of the Rings versus reading the fucking Silmarillion. You know?
Yeah, I pretty much only really delve into the lore in Elder Scrolls, and that's because I got
Well,
like the
that's
collector's
also
edition.
interesting.
I got the collector's edition of Morrowind like back in the day, and it came with like a lore
Oh,
book,
yeah.
and I
Well, I'm
was
gonna read
poor and I
this
was
because
12 and I didn't have much to read, so
bathroom material, right?
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So Divinity's got an interesting concept to it. You got your typical races: dwarves, elves, humans. I think what they do with elves is really unique and interesting. Well, probably not unique.
I mean, it's pretty unique. I don't think it's interesting. I don't like the whole turn you into a fucking tree thing. Because mostly
Well,
I'm a little biased because I wanted to play a wizard last time, an elementalist, and I did, and I was an undead elf, and all my fucking armor looked like I was a fucking tree. Like, if I stand there long enough, I'm like, where am I? And it's like, oh, you're just blending in with the fucking terrain because you're a
yeah, that's
tree.
great. That's the point of it. I think most fantasy games have their elves, and usually they're woodland people, or you have some form of woodland elves. And this one does it in a nice way. And I'm just saying I don't know because there might be other things out there that have done it this way. But the idea is like the elves are actually made of wood. They are trees. They're walking, living wood, and they go out into the world and do things. And that's why they wear leaves and shit as their armor.
I know, it makes sense. I'm
It's
just
all
saying,
mystical
I'm
tree
biased because
shape.
I don't like the way their armor looks.
And I think it's cool the way that when they die, they turn into fucking trees that grow and root and all that shit. That's pretty awesome. It adds a depth to the world. Like if you were to make that like an isometric RPG, it's not as engaging as if it were like Elder Scrolls, where you're first person immersed into the world. That would be interesting. Like every tree you see could possibly be an old dead elf or something like that.
Yeah.
That's I don't know. That's really interesting. And the idea that they cannibalize, like they eat flesh, they eat their own, and it allows them to like absorb the memories of the person. It doesn't seem like they can absorb all memories forever, just maybe like the most like a recent memory kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. I wish there were more gameplay elements that involve that. Like
Yeah.
every now and then you learn something that you don't
If
need.
only it
But
was as important as Scholar.
yeah, Jesus Christ, what a big mistake we did not picking that. If I had
Yeah, if you
known,
play this game, make sure you choose the Scholar tag.
there's
Every fucking
a
thing is
handful
part
of
of it.
quests you just can't do. You can't read a lot of the books, which allow you to do the quests if you don't have the scholar tag. And once you pick your tags, yeah, you can get other tags added as you do things throughout the game, but scholar isn't one of them. You have to pick that one at the beginning.
Well, I think the mistake there is that they don't really inform you what it means not to take it. Not picking up Scholar, they really need to inform you a little bit more of what that means. It's basically what game is it where you can just like have your intellect so low that you can't even communicate with people? Is that like Fallout and Elder Scrolls? Like
I
if
don't think
you,
so.
I think in Fallout you can well, what it might not be Fallout, but you can like take a low intellect score or something like that, and you basically have no. I think it's the original Fallout games. If you take super low intellect score, you can't even communicate with NPCs. Like you just like grunt and shit. It's hilarious and an interesting way to play through the game, but they at least let you know that. In this game, scholars should be like, oh, if you don't pick up scholar, you're illiterate.
Well, I mean,
But
in their mind, they're thinking like most people are going to play with a full party, and if if the player doesn't pick scholar, they'll have someone in their party. But in our situation, like spoilers, at the beginning of Act 2, everyone who you don't pick to be in your party dies.
Yeah.
So here we are, just the two of us, super OP because we picked the lone wolf talent.
Hmm.
None of us picked scholar, and all the fucking other people we could have in our party are dead.
Which I think it's important to note that, you know, when you play through the game the first time, it's fine to get a full party. But this is our second time. We want to do lone wolf because you basically,
Significant
instead of
buffs.
getting four characters, you get two in your party, and it's this really interesting thing where every time you put a point in an attribute, it's 2 points instead. So you kind of scale with the content to a faster degree, and it feels better, it feels smoother, but also
And you
you
get
don't have
more
to
action
juggle.
points, which feels a lot better.
Yeah,
Instead of doing like one, maybe
right.
two abilities per turn, you get to do three or four.
You also don't have to juggle two characters amongst yourselves, you know, which isn't bad, but it's kind of it's this is my main character I made, and this is some rando that follows me around. Like
Yeah.
it's and I control them. It's you know,
I definitely like Lone Wolf better.
yeah, absolutely. It feels more like an RPG in that way. Uh, I like it.
I mean, I kind of want to go and see what my Elementalist character would have been like if I had done Lone Wolf. I mean, we play with a
Yeah.
lot of mods too for more AP and more sprint speed
Well,
and
it
added
needs it.
classes and
It needs it.
other stuff. Yeah, it does need it.
This is I c- I don't know if there's games out there that's like it, but at this point in time, I feel like RPGs like that should have a whole lot of customization on the rule sets of the game because it's essentially D&D. It's essentially tabletop D&D, and you're the player, and the game is the DM, and the game creators are the DM in terms of making the story and setting up the rules. But as is with any D&D campaign, the people who start playing it typically adjust the rules that they don't really enjoy or something like that, and everybody accepts that as okay. There's no like
Well,
enforced
that's
rule
why there's
set.
mod support.
Right, that's fine, and I'm cool with that, but I think as a standard more games should just, and I'm not talking about like allowing you to do some really deep system changes. I'm just talking about like, you know, the number of AP you have or the start or the max number or stuff like that. You know,
Well, I think a good
just a little
solution would have just
slider from
been
6 to 8 or something like that.
take away one of your default action points at the beginning of every turn, but you get 4 points that are specifically for movement. Because as it stands, every class has some kind of mobility type spell, like tactical retreat or cloak and dagger. Like every class has one. And it's in your best interest to like put a few points into other classes just to get multiple of those because movement is super fucking important.
Yeah, well, this is kind of like the old Fallout games where everything's based off just AP, like everything costs AP, and that's whatever. I mean, I agree that a better system would be that the movement is separate, but I wouldn't say just a flat four. I'd say it'd be based off of whatever your initiative is or something like that, or actual speed
Well, you have a
stat.
movement stat, so I mean, each point will, just like it is now, each point will bring you a certain distance.
Yeah, but it still eats an AP up, which is very valuable. Well, and to be fair, when we were playing the first time, the rogue actually had a movement stat so high that she could move for 0 in the beginning of the match. Like her
Yeah, well, there's a
first set of
talent that
movement would
does
be
that,
0. Yeah,
which normally I'd take, except I got so many movement abilities that I don't really need it. And the mods help with that because the mods mirror like the in-game uh, things, and I'm pretty sure that's because they don't want to make animations for the mods, so they just take ones that already exist and maybe do a fucking color palette pass on them and change it. And the effects are different, but it's got to look the same because they
yeah.
don't want to make animations. So each of those have a movement thing too. So in addition to the huntsman, the scoundrel, and the warfare mobility things, I got like three more in addition to that.
Yeah.
It helps, especially as a melee.
Oh yeah. It's fun. It's a fun game. Um
It's fucking
yeah.
long too. Like I'd say it's definitely worth the
Pretty long.
money. It's like a
Well,
50, 60 hour campaign.
I think that's one of its weak points is not that it's long. I mean, RPGs are typically long and should be long. You know, you play a game like Fallout, for example, like the original Fallout games, and a lot of it's randomly generated. Like there are a couple towns on it. You have an overview map that you travel on, and it's literally just a really low quality map. And you click on a spot that's a town, which is a kind of a green circle somewhere, and you're just a dotted line that travels to that, and anywhere in between your travel points you can run into random encounters which just pop you on a map that they made that has randomly generated encounters that they set up, and you can encounter one of X number, and that adds a lot of interesting elements to the game. And then you hit these towns and there's stuff to do in the towns and they want you to go to other locations. I think the big problem with Divinity is a lot of the game really takes place in 3 locations, and they really draw out your time in those areas. So you kind of get sick of those areas quickly.
Well, I think another part of that problem is that the world is static. Like, you have all your
Yeah.
encounters already set up and waiting for you, and
Yeah.
once you do them, nothing else shows up there. Everyone in town is just standing behind a fucking pavilion waiting to sell you shit. So,
Yeah.
there, like, nothing you do actually changes anything. Like, in terms, like, you can't go into like a new area, get ambushed, fucking kill everyone there, and then come back, an hour later and find out that people are investigating what happened. Like, the world is just
Yeah.
kind of dead.
Yeah, it's pretty dead. Like we killed some guards early on in the town. Nobody ever investigated them. I mean, if a guard sees a corpse, they'll run over and be like, "Who did this?" And if you're too close to them, they'll come running over you and immediately.
And then you just tell them that you
did it.
didn't, and they're like, "Oh, okay."
You can persuade them or like bribe them. Otherwise, they know you did it somehow.
Yeah, that's another system in the game that's it's not exclusive to this game, but I really don't like it because, like, let's say you steal something, you steal some gear, you put it on, you go to another town or another area, and you get caught stealing, or your friend gets caught stealing something, and you get searched. They will know what is on you that's stolen and fuck you over for it if you don't bribe them or persuade them. Even though it has nothing to do with what was stolen, they just know that that thing was stolen. That shit's gotta go. It's not,
Yeah,
like I said, it's not the only game to do it. Fucking Kingdom Come did it. Morrowind did it. I think some of the other Elder Scrolls did it.
do it typically. I think. I mean, there are certainly. Kingdom Come system is interesting. I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to create a system where if you murder someone, they don't necessarily know it's you, but the information, like if you become notorious, it try to, the information gets spread around, and if you don't come around for a while, they kind of forget about you.
I just think it's too much, I guess, programming or processing power, especially for people who play characters that steal a lot of shit. Because you have to tie it to the value somehow. Like, if I steal a fucking potato, right, like, no one should fucking know that potato's stolen. That shouldn't even count as stolen. But in my playthrough of Kingdom Come, I went and stole the, I don't remember the guy's name. It's the guy you go hunting with.
It's a sword, right? You stole a
Yeah,
sword
it's like
from
the
him?
best fucking sword in the game. And I fucking stole it. And, something like that, people would know. Like, oh shit, the guy who, like,
Yeah,
is-
you're wielding his sword. Where did you get this sword? Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's got somebody else's initials engraved on it. Like,
But
yeah,
then, like,
shit
some
like
people
that.
wouldn't know, or some people wouldn't care, and then what is it, a proximity thing? Like, it's a lot of programming that goes into it. So I get why
Yeah,
they do it that way, but they should really err on the side of you don't get caught instead of the other way around, because it's really fucking annoying, especially for someone like you who's probably decked out and stolen shit. Like, if you ever get caught, you're fucked. You just
Well, I mean,
lose all your gear.
let's say I'm walking around, in a town, and I have that sword on my back. They're not going to know it's that sword unless I pull it out and show it to them. I just don't like the systems where guards would just always randomly come up to you and like, "Hey, you got a stolen item on you." Like, how would you fucking know?
Yeah.
I'm okay with, like, I mean, I don't remember which Elder Scrolls did it. Maybe it was Oblivion, but the guards wouldn't fuck with you. But if you went up and talked to them, they would be like, "Wait a minute, I know you," right? Or like you would get close to them and be like, "I feel like I've seen you before." That's a good system. Like if
Yeah,
you
well,
walk
it
too close
also-
to guards and shit, they kind of start to get like a little bit of what?
I mean, and that's why I think in Oblivion you get that, is it the gray something mask? Mask of the Gray
Mask
something.
of the Gray Fox.
Yeah, so it basically creates an entire second identity for you. So you can commit all
Yeah.
your crimes with the
As
mask
the
on,
Gray Fox,
and
yeah.
then take the mask off, and you're just free and clear. That's a fucking brilliant system. But they need to make it not like a fucking, oh, you did all the Thieves Guild, now you get this reward. Like, that should just be a system. Fucking disguises. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Disguise systems are very rare in games. It's very strange.
I'm excited. I'm hoping that that's why Elder Scrolls 6 has taken so long. That they're actually going to make some pretty significant changes. Because let's face it, they changed some of the leveling systems between like as Elder Scrolls has progressed, and the graphics are better.
Well, they kind of regressed into Elder Scrolls 6 or 5 rather, but
I mean, I liked it. I mean, I play Magic
it's
users,
good.
so I
But
liked
there
it.
was some regression from Oblivion, certainly. Like the lack of creating your own spells.
Yeah, that was a big
Uh,
deal. Not a huge deal because mods, but if you play on console, then you're limited.
yeah, but I'm not. Modding is great on PC. It's wonderful, but I prefer the game developers to do some shit. 'Cause every time I mod a game, I feel like I'm not really playing the intended version. Like if you play, you can certainly get new magic in Elder Scrolls 5, but it's some magic that some guy has thought up on
Yeah.
his
Well,
own,
I
and
mean, a
he
lot of it's
sometimes it's
interesting, but
overpowered or broken or doesn't work very well. And sometimes it's great.
well, it's been a
You know,
while since I've used Skyrim mods. But here's the problem with mods, especially in Skyrim, is like you get these new spells that are like, oh, it puts this debuff on them, and then when you do this other thing, it does this, and it reacts, and there's
yeah, they're
synergy
trying to
with the
make it way
debuff.
too complicated.
Yeah, but it's way more effective just to fucking kill them with fire. Like,
Yeah,
why
yeah,
would you do all
yeah.
that unless you're just like intentionally gimping yourself?
Well, that is also one of the problems of the Elder Scrolls series. Is as a mage, typically you're very underpowered throughout the whole game.
Well, not in
And
Oblivion, but in Skyrim you were because
well, not in
everything worked
Oblivion because you
differently.
could make spells. Like
Well,
you
your
get to the
spell's
point
also
where
scaled with your stats,
yeah,
which it
that's
doesn't do that. Like once you get to a certain level in Skyrim, you just
you'd
get a new
never use
spell.
that. Yeah, so you end up never using those cool like flamethrower hands and shit.
Well,
Like
that's the thing is like they start out as flamethrower hands, and then at like level 20 you get flame wall, which is flamethrower hands again with more damage, except the fire sticks to shit and also
yeah,
does damage when they run through it. But
it's
it's
not
it's a
good as
lot like
good as a
vanilla WoW,
fireball.
how the shit feels weaker and weaker as you get higher level.
Yeah.
And that kind of sucks. And
Well,
there's also
that's
there's a mod
current
that
though.
fixes that. And with that mod, everything feels great. You can use whatever you want. But I think the reason they got rid of the creating your own spells was because I used to do this. You can combine things, and one of them was drain life. And drain life is like a temporary health loss unless you kill someone. So it's really, really cheap to make, and it's really, really cheap to cast. So early game, you could just do drain health for 1 second on target, 100%. Or not 100%, 100 points, which was the maximum. So you get a really cheap
Yeah.
spell that just one shot shit. And then, like, later, you just always tack that on to whatever other spell you're making.
I also think the Elder Scrolls needs more pursuit of power quests and things like that. Like I understand balance and the need to have people feel like it's not too easy to go through because there aren't really difficulty settings. I mean, there are, but all it really does is increase the health of the mobs or decrease them. And it always feels cheap to do it that way. I want to gain power by doing things. Like every time like when I played Skyrim the first time, I played a mage, which I typically don't do. I typically do like, Brotherhood stuff or, rogue or
Yeah,
something
that
like
was
that.
actually, that class was really good in Skyrim, actually. The
Yeah.
stealth archer thing.
Yeah. So I played a mage, and my whole concept the whole time was just I want more power. And it felt like they didn't have those kind of things available.
Yeah.
Um, you become like the head of the college, and it's like, oh, great. It really doesn't afford you anything new in terms of spells or power. There are some power
Morrowind
quest
did
lines,
that
but
right. The only thing is that the whole combat system in Morrowind is kind of fucking terrible. But Morrowind, let's just dive into this for a minute. You could do anything as a magic user, right? Like,
yeah.
and if you have enchanting, you can take your gear and put permanent enchants on it, right? So you could actually get, there's this effect called Sanctuary, which is basically your chance to dodge. So you could
Mhm.
just put, if you had a lot of money and you leveled up your enchanting, you could put Sanctuary a certain percentage on multiple pieces of gear until it's 100% and just never get hit by anything. Or Chameleon and just be invisible all the time. But since it's not invisibility, it's Chameleon, you can still do shit. So you could basically use magic to do anything in that game. You could use magic to just destroy things. You can use magic to summon a bunch of armor and weapons. You could use magic to go invisible and stealth around and never get seen. So magic was great, except for the system sucked. Like your mana didn't regenerate at all.
Yeah.
But even on
Well,
console versions, there was cheat codes that would make certain stats regenerate. Like you just hit pause and type in a button combination, and like your mana would regenerate, your health would regenerate. So that was still, in the days of cheat codes that made it okay. And that's mostly where I played it, was on console because I was 14.
I just remember jumping everywhere and gaining fucking ridiculous acrobats stats and athletic stats.
Yeah, well, that's because that's open to cheesing the system. I mean, in theory, it's great. Like, yeah, the more you use something, the higher it levels. But then it's like, oh well, you're telling me if I jump, that's what levels up my acrobatics. But it also gimps you because it's like 10 level ups in a skill, and your overall level goes up. So if you're like level 20 in all your combat skills, but you're level 100 in acrobatics, all of a sudden all the enemies are really strong, and you still suck because all you've been doing is jumping around.
Yeah.
But that's kind of
jump away though.
Yeah, right. I mean, do you remember how high you could jump in Morrowind when it was maxed out?
Well, have you seen the playthroughs where people like immediately beat the game because they just go outside and eat a potion? Like,
Yeah.
it lets them jump over everything. Ridiculous. It's hilarious too. But I mean, Divinity kind of shares in the Elder Scrolls thing where there is a lot of openness to what you can do with your character. You're not limited. You pick a class in the beginning, but it's really just a template. You can like right now I'm playing like a huntsman with a crossbow. At any point, I could drop the crossbow, respec, and pick up daggers. I could honestly right now probably even use daggers or at least a spear. I'd be a little gimp because I haven't been putting points into two-hand, but
Well, you can always respect those points.
you can also just use magic at any fucking time, regardless of if you like, as long as you put points into the magic so that you can learn it. You can just.
I mean, you're only limited by how many points you get, and the XP is limited, so you can't really do everything. You have to respec and kind of choose. It kind of gives you enough points to kind of have your main spec followed by like an off spec.
I don't know. Like I'm gonna have to next time we play respec and take away some of the abilities I have, move back out of the magic stuff. I get to the point where I'm playing and I have all this damage and stuff, and then I'm like, well, what if I had fortify and went for when we need it, or what if I always want to have these spells in case we need it, and then I have them and it just takes up space and it's like convoluted. But you don't even need spells because you can craft scrolls and find scrolls and just use those as magic.
They're still based on your intelligence, so they don't do a whole lot of damage.
But I'm talking about like teleport or something like that. More utility based spells.
Which, I mean, you don't even need that because every class has mobility options.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't miss teleport. It's kind of awkward to use.
It's very awkward to use, especially now that you have like all these jumps, right?
Yeah, you just fucking go there.
You just go there, yeah.
But I'll tell you what, you playing in an elementalist, I felt like I always had the right tool for the job, right? Like you have to devote a lot of points into memory so you can learn all these skills and stuff. But like when you have every element, it feels really good. You're like, oh, what's this guy resistant to? Oh, okay, well, don't use that. I got all this other shit to do. And there's a lot of utility there, but like I said, lots of points in memory, which is why you should get a memory mod if you're going to play this game, because otherwise you're just dumping way too many points into it.
What is it? 2 points per memory by default?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the one that gives you 4. It's really necessary. Like, really.
Yeah.
Because memory gives you nothing else other than like.
Because let's face it, like right now I'm playing a two-handed melee character, and I got a lot of shit that I don't need, but I have it anyway.
Yeah, like I said, I'm gonna pull that back next time we play, probably Tuesday or whatever. I'm gonna kind of pull that back. Although we might need to start getting into Evil Within or something. I don't know. We'll see. Kind of want to finish.
Well, we got to at least finish this current playthrough. I mean, that's only another week or two, and not even
so
two.
What is this about?
Maybe a week.
Resident Evil 8.
Well, they were talking with the developers, and they basically confirmed that there will be a Resident Evil 8, and they're kind of starting to work on it, and there's no details yet. But Resident Evil is my jam. So I'm already like, yes, more Resident Evil.
I prefer grape.
Grape?
Grape jam.
Raspberry.
You also
only one man would dare give me raspberry.
Lone Star. Okay, yeah, and apparently there's like a what? Never mind. This is retarded. No, forget it. I was reading
Well,
something.
here's what I want to see out of Resident Evil 8. I want them to stick with first person. I think if they want to go back and do third person, they can keep doing remakes and stuff. But I want to see another first person game and see where it goes. And I think they will because they usually, they stuck with fixed camera and then they stuck with over the shoulder. So I don't know why they would just do one first person game and then back out of that. But they're all talking about like the overarching story and what Umbrella is and what Chris is doing. And honestly, I don't fucking care. I don't want to get after their track record. I don't want to get invested in the story anymore. I'll get back to that. But what I want to see him do is more of these isolated stories. Right? They kind of touch on this overarching thing that's happening, but it never focuses on that. Like, I like the idea of being trapped in a mansion or a police station and you gotta get out.
Really, even kind of a city. If you think of RE2, you're really kind of trapped in the city.
Well, more so Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil 2, you start in the city and then
that's true,
for the first 20 minutes and then you never get to go out again. Resident Evil 3, they kind of turn the city into the mansion, which is weird because it's like a city like you'll never see in actual America, right? It's like a bunch of like walking areas. There's like restaurants that are like down an alleyway that you can't like park at, and there's like just bikes and shit. Like, who rides a bike?
New York.
So it's a really weird city, but it's kind of cool. But the thing here's why I don't really care about the story. All right, so you play Resident Evil 1. And picture you don't know anything about Resident Evil, and you might not know anything about Resident Evil. Spoilers ahead, by the way. I mean, 20 years old, spoilers, but whatever. I think we're past the statute of limitations on spoilers for Resident Evil.
Statute of limitations.
So all you know is that you're part of this, elite police squad, and half your team went missing, and you got to go in and find them. You get attacked by dogs that seem really aggressive, and then you're just trapped in this mansion. And the story's never really laid out for you. There's a handful of cutscenes that kind of explain stuff, but you mostly learn through reading files and like visual storytelling and like, what the fuck is this place? And by the end, you get to the lab and you piece together that Umbrella is doing illegal research and they accidentally created zombies while they were trying to make this super weapon called Tyrant. And there are some intentional monsters like the shark thing and the dogs, but the zombies were an accident. That was just like, oh, we got exposed to the virus we're using. And then you escape and that's it. Right. And then Resident Evil 2 takes place a couple months later. Destroying the mansion, it didn't get contained. So dogs started biting hikers and started turning into the zombies. And eventually that spread to the city and then it just blew up from there. Resident Evil 3 is the same thing, only they instead of introducing new characters, they bring you back to Jill, who you played in the first one, and it's her story about how she escaped, and you meet this Carlos dude, and if you get one of the specific endings, Barry comes and rescues you. So at the end of Resident Evil 3, it's also like, oh, you're okay, you're out of the city, that's the story, and Raccoon City gets nuked. And that's it. And, Umbrella gets blamed for it, as they rightfully should. And then the next one is Code Veronica, which is Claire from Resident Evil 2 trying to find Chris. And she gets the lead that he's on some island. She goes there, gets captured. And turns out it's an Umbrella training facility. And they all got exposed to this virus too. So zombies. And then part 2 of that game is you play as Chris coming to rescue Claire because you heard she was looking for you. So, whoops. And and then the island blows up at the end. So at the end of all these games, everyone's like, we're going to go to Umbrella. We're going to take them down. We're going to go to their headquarters. Yeah. And then you waited and waited and waited for a new Resident Evil game to come out. And it comes out with Resident Evil 4. And it's like, oh yeah, Umbrella's gone. Zombies are gone. Here's Leon from Resident Evil 2. He works for the president now. And you're just looking for the president's daughter. And go. It's like, well, what happened? Like, the first fucking 7 to 10 years of Resident Evil games were building up to going down and taking down Umbrella. And then you just it never happens in game. Nope. It's just like, oh, okay.
It gets all crazy and shit. It gets all franchisey.
Yeah, basically. And they actually do kind of put it into a game. If you play the Wii game, Umbrella Chronicles, which is like an on-rail shooter for the original Wii, you do see the takedown of Umbrella, and it's really lame. It's like a fucking Time Crisis game where it's all like this sterile white like lab environment, and you basically walk in, kill a few things, go into this giant missile silo, kill this super tyrant guy before they launch the thing and blow it up, and that's the end of it. Which is fucking stupid. It's such a cop out, and it's in a game that no one played. I don't even take it as canon. Fuck that. What I take as canon is, back after Resident Evil 2 came out, they released a bunch of comic books, like serious comic books where like the paper is glossy and everything. And I have them, and one of them is actually the team going to Umbrella and taking them down. And it's like this old ass castle with a bunch of like puzzles and shit. Like, yes, that would have been a great game. Like, picture the mansion, but like 10 times bigger. And instead of just having 2 characters to pick from, you got like 6, right? And they all have these intertwining storylines, like Resident Evil 2. Like, if they just made Resident Evil 2 mixed with Resident Evil 1, but just bigger and better, that would have been the perfect Resident Evil 4. But instead they went for this, like, oh, we're a shooter now.
Yeah, well, I think the problem there isn't necessarily that they wanted to make a shooter or something. I think it's like they started with a good story. Zombies is everybody's done a zombie story differently. I think like the Rage virus is pretty good in the Days Later series because it's kind of technically zombies, but they run in there. It's not really like.
Well, they're also not dead
realistic.
And they don't eat people,
Yeah,
so not
it's
really
more realistic. So you get the cool concept of like they can starve to death because they're not actually eating or something. If you think about like the introduction of 28 Days Later, dude wakes up out of a hospital, he's walking around, he walks to a church and he finds them just kind of all dormant, just kind of slowly dying because there's nothing to eat. Or to attack or whatever. Well, they don't eat, but whatever, there's no one to attack, so they're not freaking out. But you get like the zombie thing where it's like a Romero thing. It's like, oh, it's like supernatural. But then you get kind of the in between that where it's zombies, but it's it's a virus or something like that. And this is kind of a cool concept. It's less realistic because fucking decayed flesh or whatever walking around and still working, but you got to suspend the disbelief. But with Umbrella, I think one of the cool things has always been the idea of some mega corporation working with the government, because you get these already with DARPA and things like that, and they're trying to create super soldiers or something, and they end up fucking up and releasing this virus, and it gets out of control. And I even like to some degree that they have a militant branch of Umbrella that tries to fix their mess or hide it or cover it up.
Yeah.
That's really cool. But I think they jumped the shark and went way too far out with the concept of like, now they're just like totally cool with making zombies and shit.
Well, that's the part about zombie games I don't really like, is there's too many special infected, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
that's why
I like
no
the
one.
tyrant concept.
Oh yeah, there should be a few, but they should be like mini boss or boss fights, not just sprinkled into your other enemies. Like, I'm all for enemy variety and shit, but like, I want to kill zombies. Like, Resident Evil started as a zombie game, and the appeal to that is that, like, one zombie isn't really a threat, but it's not really about the threat. It's about you don't have the ammunition to fucking kill all these things, right? Like, you got to decide.
Yeah. And it's like the whole world versus you. Basically.
Yeah. But it's like you're in a mansion. You have to like learn the layout, right? Like which areas am I going to be like backtracking through over and over again? Because those are the guys I'm going to kill. If it's just a room you're going to go in once, pick up an item, and leave, then it's like, oh well, I guess I just won't kill these ones. And it's also a matter of balancing your inventory. Like, if you have a lot of health and not a lot of ammo, then maybe don't kill the zombies. And if it's the other way around, you have not a lot of health but a lot of ammo, then fucking kill the zombies.
The idea of zombie dogs and zombie birds, because it would make sense that a virus was being tested on animals first, so it's capable of jumping or something like that. I mean, I'm not an expert in that kind of shit, but from at least a layman's perspective of playing video games, it feels like it works. But like the liquor concept and stuff, cool enemy, cool design, but story-wise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if it was an accidental outbreak, like you're supposed to be.
Well, the liquor wasn't accidental.
Well, I know that, but that I feel like that's kind of the start of them getting a little too crazy with, they were making all kinds of things that, like, why would they be making mindless creatures to?
Well, they were the whole idea for at least the first. Like, I don't have any problems with anything in the first 2 games. Not really the third game either. But they were basically experimenting, right? Because
Yeah, I
the
know.
zombies were an accident. Everything else came first. So like the first thing I think they were trying to do, and I could be wrong about this because I don't I don't remember, but I think the original thing was like the tyrant, and then when the tyrant failed, they're like, hey, let's inject like frogs, and that's how you got the hunters. And they're like, what if we just inject it directly into living flesh, and that's where you get the lickers from. So they're just like trying all these different
Well, I'm
species,
fine with
and
that, but there's too many of them, is what I'm saying. Like, there's way too
well,
many. Like, when you
you
go
didn't.
into umbrella complexes, it's fine because hey, they broke out and they were in there being tested on. But I feel like liquors became too abundant in the
Well, you
series.
saw them in five. They were only in Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 5, and yeah, there was way too many in five. There's no real reason for them to be there other than just a fucking fan service,
Yeah.
you know. But in two, it made sense. It was only like I don't know, probably 10 or 15 throughout the whole game. And they could fucking kill you in one hit if you didn't have full health. I mean, they were
No,
a pretty significant
there's
threat.
some cool concepts in the series too, like Albert Wesker basically being the example of what the T virus is supposed to be, I guess, like where he's super powerful and shit, but he's not mutated to the point where he can't control himself,
Yeah, and
or
that's
he's
pretty
just a
much the
mindless
goal
creature.
for every one of those bosses in the game, like Marcus and Resident Evil Zero,
Yeah.
and Alexia and
I'm
Code
also
Veronica. I
cool
mean,
with
Alexia
some of the
basically
sick
was
stuff.
like Alexia, like because later in the story they kind of retcon it and say that Wesker was created in a lab specifically to take the T virus, and I'm pretty sure they stole that from the movie with Alice. But Alexia wasn't like created to house the virus, but she found out that if it was in her system and kind of took over slowly, she would maintain control. So she basically injected herself with the virus and then froze herself for 20 years. And then when
Yeah.
she came out of it, she was, the final boss of Code Veronica. Spoilers.
Yeah, but I think there's some stuff in six that's fine, like people that want to get their hands on the virus and inject themselves and it backfires or something. That's kind of cool. I do think that those kind of concepts work, but I think they did go a little too crazy in the umbrella big evil corporation trying to
The
dominate
problem
the
with six
world
is that the
thing.
scope is too big. Like Resident Evil doesn't work on like a worldwide
Yeah, yeah,
scale.
that's true.
Plus, I mean, even if that was the only problem, it would still be a good game if it was like still up to the standards of quality of the other ones. But it wasn't. It just wasn't as polished. It didn't really look as good. But, like, there's a lot of transitions in that game that don't work. Where the game like takes control of your character to show you a cutscene, and then gives you control back, and then you walk two steps, and then it rips control away from you again to show you something else. And it's a
That's just
lot of
incompetence.
bullshit.
That's just development incompetence. Yeah, uh, they went a little too ham on the scale, trying to make it too. They tried to make it epic, which that's not. I don't think you do that with zombie games. I think
No,
you have
because
to
it
say
never
like,
ends well. I mean, there's
this
no
is my
zombie story that
son.
ends with like, "Oh, we found the cure
Yeah,
and it's
and
over."
I think seven is a great example of this why they everybody loved seven because they brought it back to a small scale accidental outbreak kind of situation. Yeah, you bring in some kind of branch of umbrella that's trying to clean up, which I like that better. I think that's a return to form where umbrella's working with the
Well, it's also
BSA
not the same umbrella and whatever. But I don't even
sorry, the
really care
BA.
about that. I mean, I'm curious, but that's not what Resident Evil 7 was all about. It was about just the
Well,
small
I
scale
know there's
story.
got to be there's also probably some I said BFA and then BA. It's BSA, sorry. Uh
BSAA. AA.
BSA. Yeah, there's two A's in there. I knew there was two A's. So I kind of like that though. I like even if it's like not really a retcon, but like maybe there's even some kind of underlying sinisterness to it with them working with the BSAA. I think I kind of like that concept, honestly. Yeah, it's a mystery and it's interesting. Like, wow, what the fuck, And you don't really learn anything about that from playing the Chris story, also, by the way. But
Yeah. But I mean, the one good thing that they're doing with 7 now, and I'm hoping for 8 and beyond, is that like that whole Resident Evil 6 timeline is just like behind everyone now.
yeah,
So like there's no worldwide threat but there's still going to be these isolated outbreaks where
Yeah.
these people get sent in, and I want to see those isolated outbreaks.
You know what? Maybe we needed 6 in order for that to be possible, right?
Well, the weird thing is if you read that article about the Resident Evil 8 that they're talking about, they're like, yeah, Resident Evil 7 sold over 5 million copies and was their 5th most successful Resident Evil game. So Capcom's actually come out and said, like, look, at this point, we know that Resident Evil is going to make us money. We're not worried about making the most money. We're worried about making a good Resident Evil game first. We know that we're going to get enough money back. And I'm like, wow. And they put their money where their balls are, Like they made Resident Evil 7. It didn't do as well as Resident Evil 6 or Resident Evil 5, but it was a much better game. And they're going to keep making games like that. So good for them, It's like, yeah, we could sell 7 million copies if we made Resident Evil 6 the sequel, but fuck that, because no one liked it.
Well, it's also, I think 7's success is a lot of small scale stuff going on. But yeah, we needed 6. I don't think we needed the game 6. Maybe we needed like the backstory 6, like, it spread across the world and became a big problem. The outbreak was never contained. That's fine. I'm kind of okay with that. Because RE4 and RE5 are a little erring on the ridiculous side, but they work still because it's like little isolated areas where maybe Umbrella's got sister corporations or something that's doing stuff, and that's believable. But 6 was a little too fucking crazy with just running around the country with Troy Baker.
I mean, it fucking they came out before it was released and were like, hey, we're trying to do a little something for everyone. If you're a fan of like the original Resident Evils and killing zombies, then we got Leon's story. If you liked Resident Evil 4 and 5, we got Chris's story. And if you liked Resident Evil 3 getting chased around by Nemesis, then you got Jake's story. But none of them lived up to any of the, gameplay styles that they were trying to copy, Yeah,
it was just characters. Like the characters.
Well, I mean, I see what they were going for, but they all kind of played the same. Like, Leon's story was still too shooty, and it wasn't polished right. But, I mean, they stuck with, like, hey, Leon has driven this car for 10 seconds, time for him to crash it. Oh, he's in this helicopter for 10 seconds, time for him to crash it.
Oh, God.
That's so great. The fucking zombie just pokes his head in the windshield, and Leon just cuts the wheel left and right and flips the car for no fucking reason.
Idiot. Jesus Christ.
Such a bad driver. Yeah, a little jumpy, Leon.
Oh, God, what do I do? Crash the car.
Yeah, so Chris's story also, wasn't as good as Resident Evil 5. And then Jake's story getting chased around by whatever the fuck that thing was. Still not as threatening as Nemesis. Because Nemesis you could kill, and you never knew when it was coming. Right? Like, well, you couldn't really kill Nemesis until the end, spoilers. But
well, he seemed indestructible.
Yeah, he seemed indestructible, and you didn't know that you could kill him until you tried really hard. And you probably didn't have enough ammo for it. So it was kind of like this wild card. Like, you never knew when you were going to get in a fucking boss battle. And you don't have to fight him until the very end, but if you play on normal or hard and you actually kill him, then you get like all these bonuses. Like, you get a first aid pack, so you can stuff 3 first aid sprays into 1 inventory slot. You get gun parts, you can make an upgraded handgun, and at the end you get this thing that you can combine with any weapon to get unlimited ammo for it. So, I mean, there's pretty significant rewards if you actually manage to kill him, but you have to basically only kill Nemesis and nothing else in that game. But
well, it's fucking creepy, though, because you play through the first Resident Evil, and back then, that was horror. It was scary, It would jump scare you and shit. And then you play, like, these days we need it in first person and shit for full immersion, but and then you play through the second one and it's a little more open and it's getting a little more, it's less, because it's, you've already dealt with a lot of these things. And then you hit RE3 and it's like, you're this woman. So you already feel a little,
well, it's Jill. So, I mean,
I know it's Jill, but you still, like, if you play through Resident Evil 1, she's not like this amazing badass. I mean, they certainly try to
she's not even the weapons. Like, Chris was the marksman.
Yeah.
Right. And Jill was the
master of lock.
Yeah, she was like the lock picker.
Yeah. And then you're in this city and it's like RE2 and it feels that way. And then you're getting pursued by this fucking creature that just seems indestructible. And And it's not like a segmented thing where like a cinematic plays and there he is, and now you got to run down.
Yeah, a
Like,
lot of times you don't even see him show up. All you hear is a door slam and stars. You're like, oh
yeah,
fuck me. Like, and
yeah,
the crazy part
so,
is like in every game up to that, enemies never go through doors, right?
yeah,
So here's what happens in Resident Evil 3. You get to the police station, you're like, oh shit, it's like Resident Evil 2. Here we are, and
yeah.
you you go into the door, and all of a sudden there's this cutscene where fucking Brad
It's got a
gets
rocket
murdered.
launcher, right?
Yeah, and you're like, oh fuck. And then you run into the door and you're like, okay. Or you try to kill him and die, and then you try again and decide to just run away. And you're like, okay, we're in the police station. We're safe. And he doesn't come through the door.
Yeah.
And then you go through like 2 other doors. You explore a little bit, and it's another familiar area from Resident Evil 2. And all of a sudden he just jumps through the fucking window and starts chasing you around. And then you run up the stairs. You go through the door because you're like, oh, just run away. And you run through the door. You get out of, that camera perspective to where you can't see the door. And then you hear, cocoon, poof, stars. You're like, fuck!
Yeah.
This motherfucker can go through doors. What
Yeah.
the fuck? Nowhere is safe.
Even these days, when you get segments, chase segments, it's like scripted shit where you're in a hallway or in a long area where you have to run away. That game was you're just literally in areas where you play, and this motherfucker comes out at you and through shit, and it feels dynamic. It's still scripted, but at the time it felt so dynamic. Like,
Well,
can
there's
he just
also a
go
little bit of
anywhere he
random.
wants. You get as a kid, you don't understand that. Oh, it's game development is scripted and shit like that.
Well, some of it's random. So, like,
Well, I
on
know.
different playthroughs, you'll be like, all right,
I
Nemesis
know
comes
it's
through
random,
right here.
and we understand as adults now that like how that works is it's going to randomly decide if he comes through a door or something. But as a kid, you're thinking he's just out there walking around, like
Yeah.
he's up. It's like he's a thing, and it feels more alive and more serious, and that was really well done.
Yeah. But the
And
thing
there
is
was
that
flags.
Resident Evil 3 was supposed to be like an expansion of Resident Evil 2, and Code Veronica was supposed to be the Resident Evil 3. But because Sony had a deal where 3 Resident Evil games had to come out, they made, Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 3. And that's why it feels like a smaller game, but it's way more replayable, I think. Because, like, there's certain points in the game where you get to make choices about, like, do I jump down or do I jump over? Do I push him off or do I jump off myself? And on additional playthroughs, there's certain parts where you're like, all right, Nemesis is going to come through this door, so I'm ready. And then he just never does. It's like, oh, okay. And then another time when you're not expecting it at all, there he is, just fucking randomly there. And a lot of it has to do with the choices you make. So it's, I don't know, Resident Evil 3 is probably one of my favorites. And then they come out with like Revelations, which is like, okay, obviously no one liked 6 and stuff. We're going to go back to the slightly more survival horror stuff with characters you know. So you get Revelations 1, and they fucking release it on 3DS for some reason. And it's on there for like a year and a half. And by the way, it's the best Resident Evil game to take place on a boat, right after Dead Aim and Gaiden. So yeah, if you're into that. But when it came to console and PC, it definitely feels like it's a 3DS game. Like you just tell like the view distance, the limited environments. There's not a whole lot of places to go. So, but despite that, it was pretty good. And even though the enemies didn't look like zombies, they behaved more like zombies. Like they kind of shamble. And the whole 3D thing actually helped when it was on 3DS. It was just it was novelty, but it was kind of cool. And then Resident Evil Revelations 2 came out, and that game seemed like it was more like focused on raid mode. Like they wanted you to play raid mode endlessly, which is fun. It just gets pretty old pretty fast.
Well, that's the multiplayer regression of video games.
Well, I mean,
that's during that time.
I kind of hope raid mode makes a comeback in Resident Evil 2 or something, because like the concept of it is, I mean, it's like a raid kind of where you just endlessly level up and get better weapons.
Co-op.
And it's like a looter shooter kind of thing. But
then they tried to make like a PvP game, and it was fucking
Umbrella
got
Corps?
a set of giant balls on them to try and do some shit like that.
yeah, and they even came out and said, this is going to be our esport. And everyone knew right off the bat. No one wanted it. It wasn't very well made. I never played it, but...
Game developers, stop making your games as an esport. Let communities decide, okay?
Yeah.
It will happen. If your game is esports worthy, gamers will decide to play it as an esport. Then you can back it, okay? Otherwise, you're putting money in a shit that doesn't need to exist yet.
I mean, the concept was cool. Actually, the concept of Operation Raccoon City was awesome. Like, here's the problem with Operation Raccoon City. It retconned the fucking story. So you got this third party developer saying like, all right, this is going to be like a Left 4 Dead kind of thing where you need to escape the city. And everyone was like, sweet. Resident Evil Outbreak was awesome. But Outbreak you played as just random people, right? You get to like pick, I'm the cop, I'm the nurse, I'm the bus driver, whatever. And they all have specific skills and you got to work together in an old school Resident Evil type of way to solve problems and, you know, the puzzles and shit and get out of the city. The problem with Operation Raccoon City is that you're playing as characters like Leon and shit,
Yeah.
right? Like not all the time, but like you're directly intertwined with the characters from the main game. And like there's a point where you fucking kill Leon. You get into this fucking firefight and he takes like 1,000 bullets to kill. It's like a fucking not Divinity, Jesus, Division.
Division. Yeah.
And you fucking kill Leon. And it's just, and it wasn't very well made, but goddamn, if they had made like it has the mechanics of Resident Evil 6, and I say 6 because of the rolling shit and all that, plus the Raccoon City aspect, plus you never encounter anyone from the main game, and it's just like a Left 4 Dead kind of layout where there's different chapters where you have to get out of places, plus puzzles, that would have been fucking awesome. And that's what everyone thought it would be, and it's not what it was at all. Plus the gunplay felt like shit. It's one of those games that just feels like thin when you shoot it. Like the bullets seem like they go through things and they still take damage, but there's
never
no impact.
really had the shooting mechanic great. Till
Oh,
7,
4 and
I
5.
think.
No, 4 and 5 did.
4 and 5 are okay.
Well, remember, they're also from like 2004. So
Yeah.
for its time, I mean,
7's
Resident Evil
great.
4
It is
basically
great.
invented the over-the-shoulder thing and the precision aiming. Like, oh, if I shoot someone in the leg, they're going to, you know, go down on one knee and then you could
Well, it's
follow
just
up.
Japanese people being creative and actually taking the time to do it. You know, you get that creativity in a Western office. They're like, "What? Wouldn't it be cool if you shoot them in the knee and they go down?" And the fucking game dev leader is like, "No, we're not doing that. We're not working towards that. We got to work towards our esports division.
Yeah, Jesus.
Put that work in our esports division."
No, but I mean, Resident Evil 4, even though a lot of people like it, it's not one of my favorites because it kind of does away with everything I loved about Resident Evil. And even though people are like, oh, it had a great atmosphere and it was still creepy, and I'm like, not really. Like, it was on GameCube. So, like, the shittiness of how it looked was kind of distracting, you know? Everything looked muddy and washed out. I don't take that as atmosphere. Resident Evil 7 has atmosphere. There's a lot of contrast and really dark areas, and Resident Evil 4 just never really had that. It was just kind of like brown and
It's just
gray
a
everywhere.
fun game to play too. Like,
Yeah, and it is fun. But the whole time, like the first time I played it, I actually rented a GameCube and the game and a memory card, and I couldn't
meant
put it
7,
down.
Sorry, 7's a
well,
fun game to play.
no, 4 is fun, but the problem is that like the whole time I'm playing this as a hardcore Resident Evil fan, like age 15 or whatever, I'm like, this isn't Resident Evil. Like the whole time I was like blown away by how good the game was, but also blown away about how different it was. So like it's this weird thing where like, yeah, it's a good game, but it's not the Resident Evil I wanted. And then they
I think
stuck
the
with that.
plagas is the real problem in that game.
Yeah.
It's, you get it's not you're like you're supposed to in a zombie game you're supposed to shoot them in the head because that's what's running the body is the brain, so you want to shoot them in the head, and it's a reward because it's one of the smallest parts of the body that you can see, and so shooting it is you're rewarded for your accuracy. When you play Resident Evil 4 and then you shoot something in the head and it's like, fuck you, now this thing's much stronger and you got to waste more bullets on it.
Yeah.
It's
but
actually
I mean,
better to not shoot them in the fucking head. It's ridiculous.
well, say they kind of mitigate that by like, here's flash grenades, and flash grenades after their head explodes and the monster comes out, like one flash grenade will take care of them.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's ways around it, but I mean,
Shouldn't be in the
it's
game.
again, it's a lot of it is because it's a GameCube game, and it was the
You know, it
beginning
would've
of a
been-
new style of
It would have been
gaming,
better
but
if the Las Plagas comes out of their fucking chest or something if you shoot them in the chest instead of their head. Like
yeah.
that's
Well,
you
also
can
it
reward.
forces you to switch weapons a lot, and you have to constantly go into your inventory. Like at least the old Resident Evils, where you still had to go into your inventory and stuff. Like you never really had to switch weapons on the same enemy, right?
No.
Or if you did, it was like you walk into a room expecting zombies, and there's fucking lickers or hunters, and you're like, oh, switch to the shotgun.
Yep.
You know, but a lot of Resident Evil 4 is like, okay, zombies, headshot, headshot, Oh, there's more zombies. Switch to a shotgun. Multiple headshot. Oh, they're all Plagas now. Back to the inventory. Switch to a fucking grenade. Throw the grenade. Back to your inventory. Take out your pistol. You know, it's like a lot of pausing and going to your inventory, which Resident Evil 5 fixed. Which I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know why people don't like 5. 5 is a better version of 4, 100%.
100%.
Better graphics, cleaned up gameplay,
I don't know. Maybe they're all
changed
racist.
the mechanics. Yeah, right. That was the argument, right? Like, is this what you think people in Africa are like? No, this is what we think fucking zombies are like. Why do you care what color they are?
What does that even mean? Like, this is exactly how people in Africa are like. Like, what do you mean? There's towns where they're kind of semi-civilized, and then there's fucking villages. Like, what are you talking about, people? This is reality.
I mean, that's a no-win situation. Like, thank God that game didn't come out this year because, oh, Jesus. Wait, you're just killing black people and you think Africa is just a bunch of barbarians and shit. Okay, well, we'll make them all white. No, that's whitewashing. You're not representing
exactly.
Africa. Like, okay, well, fine. You don't get the game then.
It's exactly what it would be, 100%. If it's a no-win situation of whiny fucking children. It's like I say this all the time on the subreddits. I'm constantly fucking putting shit. They're fucking children, man. You get like you even have like celebrities and shit like Alyssa Milano or whatever, just standing in a fucking room chanting shit. Like, what are you talking? What are you doing? You see him walking down 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want Trump no more. Like, what the fuck? You're a grown ass person. Stop talking like that.
Hey, you're the one who said get out and vote. You know,
Clap your hands, everybody. Let's play paddywhack while we're at knick-knack paddywhack. Give a dog a bone. Don't send all the Mexicans home. Like, what the like, what is going on? Fucking ridiculous.
well, luckily, you know, it came out fucking 12 years ago now, so it's okay.
Yeah, I like Resident Evil 5, and that's not because you get to shoot black people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually like the
The
co-op.
controls are great.
The co-op sucks if you don't have someone to play with. Like, the AI will just stand there. Like, oh my god, it's so funny. It's frustrating, but it's funny when you're playing with the AI and she's standing behind you and you have hit reaction on. Because like hit reaction basically makes it so you can shoot your teammates. Like, they don't take damage, but the bullets don't go through them. But you can turn that off so it just ignores them. But if it's on and you're in her line of sight, she'll just fucking unload at the back of your head, wasting all your fucking ammo. All, like, you're trying to aim, and all of a sudden you just see a bunch of blood come out of the back of your head. I'm like, oh god, she's so stupid. But playing with a friend is fun. And a lot of people didn't like it. Takes away from the horror. It's like, are you actually getting scared by these games? Like, Resident Evil 4 wasn't really scary at all. And there's also no puzzles. Like, okay, back in the original Resident Evil days, Resident Evil 1 Remake is the best example. You would find this shit like, oh, a dog whistle. And you'd have no idea what it's for. And then you'd find like a note saying, like, okay, this is where you use it. And then you go and you use it at the right place. You kill this dog. You pick up this necklace. You look at the necklace and a coin comes out. It just says coin. You spin the coin around and check it again. It turns into a fake key. And you're just like, what the fuck? But like, you can have all the right items and be in the right place and still, like, you can't just hit a button and have it do what it's supposed to do. You have to kind of try things to see what it does. You know? In Resident Evil 4, it started this thing where, like, if you have the item and you just go check the door that it goes to, it just brings it to your inventory and uses it automatically. You know? So all you have to do is like, okay, I have everything. Let me go around and try to just click on shit. And eventually that would work. So there's not really any puzzles. And, I mean, I don't know. That's just one of the things I really liked about the original Resident Evil games was the puzzle-solving aspect of it. Because it's a weird format that not a lot of people do. Like, you think of the mansion as like this puzzle box, right? Like, it's a singular place. You're not moving from area to area, really. You have, like, the mansion and then the guest house and then the labs. And you kind of just go back and forth. But it's like unwinding the house. Like, there's only one place you can really go at the beginning, and then you get items that unlock new areas, and those give you items to unlock new areas, and eventually the whole place is open to you, and you can get to the end. And then they just kind of move to this, like, linear style thing where it's like, you need to open this door. Go here. Get the thing to open the door. and that's the extent of it. And Resident Evil 7 brought back the original stuff a little bit, but they need to do that more. More puzzles, bring back the zombies, and basically inject that into Resident Evil 7 and call it Resident Evil 8, and I will be happy. That's why I'm still hyped for Resident Evil 2 Remake, you know?
Yeah.
I'm hoping they bring all that stuff back. I'm sure they'll bring it back to some extent, but I don't want to I don't want to pick up all these fucking plugs and then be like, okay, what do I do with these? And just click on shit until it works. Force me to use my brain. How many of the Resident Evils have you played all the way through?
Well, we almost played all of them, right? Except for the shitty ones.
Well, I'm asking you because I don't know.
Well, I think we did one. We did. We couldn't do 2 and 3. We did the remaster of 1. We did 0 to some degree. I don't remember completing it, but maybe we did.
It doesn't make a very big impact.
We did Revelations 2, but not the first one. And then we did. I've played through 4 on the Wii, the Nintendo Wii, when I was in Malaysia. Had nothing to do, so I sat there and completed all of Resident Evil 4 on the Nintendo Wii.
It's really fun on Wii.
It was pretty good. And then I played 5. I owned it on the PlayStation 3, I think. Was it the 3? I played that single, play it by myself, and then I played it again with you. I don't think I ever completed it, though, when I played it by myself, and then I played it with you, and we completed it. And then we did 6, and then 7.
Yeah, we definitely got to find a way to do 2 and 3 before the remake comes out.
We did one that had raid mode. I don't remember which one that was.
Yeah, that was Revelations 2.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, Revelations 1 had it too, but we didn't play that one.
Yeah.
They put a lot of time and effort into raid mode. I kind of feel bad not playing it more, but it's weird. Like you could tell that it was like the B team making those games, and they did a fine job for a $30 game or whatever. But it's tough when there's Resident Evil 7 out in the world now. Mm-hmm. Oh, pardon me. So yeah, what else do you got to say about Resident Evil? They need to bring back the horror, keep that going. Settle for, 80% success in terms of money making. What it sounds like they're doing. And, I hope Resident Evil 2 makes a lot of money, so they'll make Resident Evil 3. I'm still holding out a little bit of hope that since Resident Evil 3 is kind of its own self-contained thing, that they'll just add that into Resident Evil 2 Remake after you beat the game.
I think 100% it's going to sell good, because we live in this age of like everybody thinks that they are entitled to play every game that comes out and every game's made for them. It's like this weird, it's really weird. It's like it's hitting, I guess it's not strange if you really think about it. Video games are kind of hitting that movie stride where big blockbuster things are really consumed by everybody. Like a big blockbuster movie comes out and everybody goes to see it, whether they're a Marvel fan or not. They go to see the Avengers. And I think that's happening in games right now. Unfortunately, it leads to people suggesting that the game should be tailored towards them, and I hope that goes away. But you get a lot of, like, streaming's a popular thing as well, and you get a lot of people that I'm pretty sure Resident Evil 2 is going to be streamed by a lot of people that don't even typically play Resident Evil games. And then on top of that, you get the whole everybody wants to play it because it's a big announcement. I think they're not hyping it up enough, though. I know that's
too far
a
out.
Remake.
Well, it also doesn't need it. It's hyped enough.
I think it needs to be hyped up as a standalone game. Like, it needs, because it's a remake. It's not just a remaster. I think they need to hype that up a little bit more.
I mean, I think everyone knows that. I mean, they already did it on Resident Evil 1 remake, and just looking at it, you know that it's a remake and not a remaster.
Well, you look at Resident Evil 7, a lot of people played that, and there's this interesting thing that happens with horror games, especially of the first-person variety, where when a big AAA horror first-person game comes out, like Outlast or Resident Evil 7, or, Amnesia wasn't really AAA, but Soma, people play these games with intent to watch other people play them as well. You get a lot of like eyeballs on games like that, where people go around like, oh, I want to see how this person played it or how this person reacted to it, and that really stems the popularity, or really boosts the popularity rather of the game. I mean, I don't think anybody would give a shit about Amnesia if it wasn't viewed by so many people so often. It's not an amazing game
Well,
by
it
any
was.
stretch.
Yeah, it's not. It was good, but it came out at a time where people wanted survival horror, and there wasn't any. Resident Evil was moving away from it for in favor of action.
By the way, I
So,
prefer Resident Evil 7 system better, where you start out defenseless and then you gain strength. Uh, because when it comes to horror, there's a lot of rules you have to obey, and a lot of people get this wrong. Like, you can't show the creature that is pursuing you, like the enemy. If you're doing a monster thing, you can't show it, because one of the most horrifying things as a tool, one of the strongest tools you have as a horror maker is the human imagination. You put something in the shadows, darkness, things like that, it freaks people out. Like sounds of footsteps. I don't remember what game it was that I was playing, and you could, I think it's Amnesia. There's a lot of like footstep sounds above you in places all the time. That might be a Machine for Pigs. I don't remember, but you'll walk around and you'll hear like footsteps above you on the wood on the foot. And it's obviously a sound that's playing, but you for a little bit, your imagination runs like, is there a fucking creature in this game that's just walking around and shit? And I'm hearing it, and that kind of freaks you out a little bit. And when I think with Resident Evil 7, obviously they did like the crazy family thing, which is kind of
yeah,
like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre stuff, which is just, you can show right away that kind of stuff, but they still have monsters in that game, and they don't show you the monsters. They kind of hide them from you early on until you randomly run into them in the basement. You get into the basement, you think, oh my God, I'm safe from that fucking family. And then boom, you get these creatures, which honestly are easier to deal with, but it still freaks you out because there's a lot of them. It kind of adds that zombie element to it. And I think more games have to understand that and be more subtle and start subtly like that. Like, oh, you are defenseless against this thing that's pursuing you or this enemy that's in the area, and it forces you into a hide and seek mode where you're trying to move around stealthily or just run past them, or whatever approach you want to take. And then later on, you start getting access to weapons, and it kind of ramps up as you go, because eventually in a video game, unless you have a short video game, you're just really, I think this is where
well,
a
you have to
game
up the
like,
stakes somehow by the end.
right. Well, this is the problem with Alien Isolation that people have. I love Alien Isolation. I think it's great because I like Alien movies, and it kind of carries that for me. But I will agree that there's too much hiding in lockers and shit like that, because at least in the beginning, until you learn how the alien behaves and how you can manipulate that, it's a pretty difficult game because you're moving so slowly all the time, because it's the perfect predator that has like these heightened senses and can hear you run. If you start running, you're just fucked. It drops out of a vent and just knows where you are and comes after you and kills you, because you're making noise. So you're walking or crouching everywhere, and you move so slowly that it's almost impossible to navigate your way around the levels, with this thing's patrolling areas, and you're trying to like, okay, it walked over there, it's got its back turned, now I can go around this corner, but you move so slow, you're like, oh God, I'm not gonna make it.
Yeah,
It feels kind of grueling and slow at times when you do it that way. So you find yourself relying on like noisemakers and shit and throwing them and distracting it so that you can walk casually through areas, which is a little bit faster than crouching. And eventually you get a flamethrower that scares it off. And I think it's good that you never really. I think you could have taken Alien Isolation and made it to where eventually you have a weapon that's capable of killing aliens, and maybe you just up the ante by adding more aliens, and that works. And you kind of see that in Resident Evil 7, how that works. You're dealing with the father early on. He's indestructible. Even when you get weapons, he's indestructible. But, they cool that off by having times where he dissipates into the background. Like, after the garage scene, you don't deal with him for quite some time until you get upstairs. Then after the upstairs scene, you don't deal with him again for quite some time until you make it to the boathouse or whatever it is, dock
And
area.
you fight him once, like in the basement.
Well, you
or
fight
something.
him in the base. Yeah, you fight him in the basement later. But when he comes back later, he's just a boss. So, and I think that's the proper way to deal with something like that, and while also increasing your power and upping the ante. Like, oh, it doesn't matter how good your guns are when you're dealing with this fucking guy.
Yeah,
he's coming at you no matter what. But with the mundane enemies, you can get that breakup, and it breaks it up nicely from survival horror feeling like you're weak and nothing to, hey, I can just obliterate these fucking zombies in the basement, no problem. It makes it kind of breaks that up like a normal good horror movie would be. You got moments of tension and then moments of like safety and relax and calm, and you got to have
that safe room music.
Yeah, save.
Soothes you. I fall asleep to that.
Well,
I'm really excited to play more Resident Evil during our horror month. I really want to go back and play 2 and 3, and I don't know how. I want to go black and never go back.
Yeah, Resident Evil is going to be fun. Resident Evil month is going to be all of December into January. It's going to be great. Be having a good time. We might play some stuff during horror month. Like 7 technically is a horror game, so we might dip into that for some. I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk about it. We'll figure it out. We got a lot of shit to do. What is this Red Dead Redemption shit?
Yeah, the horses have testicles. No testicles have physics.
And people are concerned about this.
I think they're just pointing out that it's there.
Honestly, at this point, I feel like the problem is this game is so close and people are so hype about it that they just want to talk about anything.
Yeah.
This is from the trailer video, right? Like, oh my God, IGN slows the video down so you can see the testicles wave back and forth.
Hey, you wanted realism.
This is it's not just a Rockstar thing, but this is a reality that's just going to happen. People who make models and games and shit, these artists, they're always trying to make shit more realistic. So it's only natural.
Yeah, it looks like a good game.
I get that people are weirded out by it because it's a sexual organ, but it's on a horse. Calm down.
Yeah.
I used to have a Dalmatian. Well, the family did. We used to have a Dalmatian that was, these are bird dogs. They're very lean and they're designed to chase down, your hunt and shit like that. Collect the bird for you and all that shit. And the dog was always muscular, just fucking muscular. He would, every time he'd go out his 2 times a day, he'd just run a figure 8 around the end of the property that we had. And he just was lean as fuck. And he had this set of balls on him that were just gigantic, And I remember like people would always mention that, like they'd say something about it. And I'm just thinking like, why are you talking about this dog's balls, man?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Well, it used to be normal. Bill Burr said that, right? You know what I haven't seen in a while? Balls on a dog.
If I were to drop my pants in front of you right now and just my balls are out, you wouldn't say anything. You'd try to look away. But you're just wanting to make
look away and I'd say something. You put your balls away?
Well, maybe you might say something like that, but you're not going to be just talking about it casually is my point. You're not going to be like, man, look at the balls on that guy.
Look at the physics on those balls. They swing.
It's like, why do we care at this point? Oh my God, there's a butthole on that fucking animal. Yeah, so what?
I think it's more that you put it in a video game. But I mean,
yeah, I can understand.
Why wouldn't you? I mean,
yeah, the artists,
our fucking audience is mature enough not to laugh at subtle ball physics.
So here's the concept. Let's say let's get an anus for example. Like there's plenty of games where look at Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid 5, your horse can shit and it has a gameplay mechanic to it because Kojima is God.
Dude, fucking the enemies in Doom, the original Doom had buttholes. Those fucking flying like orb demon things.
Okay, but I'm just saying for this example, you have a horse that actually takes a shit at your command and it has a mechanic to it. Like there's a reason for it to do it. And the horse's tail comes up and it shits, right? Is it more realistic or less realistic to have an anus on that horse? And how many complaints do you think it gets to not have an anus on that horse? Does it take you out of the immersiveness to see the horse's tail come up and there's nothing there and then shit just appears out of it versus an actual, like, what do you want, right? This is what we have to decide as gamers.
What kind of anus do we want on our horses?
What level of immersion do we want? Do we want just nothing there and poop comes out? Or do we want the anus to be there and then like the fucking anus widens out and the shit comes out?
I mean, I never used the horse, so
it's the best creature in the game, man. Fucking silent ass.
No. This is an important issue. What level of anus do you want when the anus should be there in video games? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, tell us.
Tell us what you think about horse anal.
Do you want just a little fucking textured butthole there, or do you want like a?
Do you want bump mapping on your anus?
Do you want bump? Do you want a 3D fucking? Do you want it to be a fucking 3D thing where it widens out and opens up and gapes as a fucking turd?
And where do you draw the line? How many frames are you willing to drop to have actually modeled buttholes instead of just textured?
How much is it going to take you out of it? You know what I mean? Like how much is it going to pull you out? Is that what you, this is where we're going?
We want as much detail as possible.
RTX on, RTX off. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Look at the shadows on the anus. When it opens up, you can see the shadow on the anus. Yeah, well,
that's it. There wasn't anything. I just wanted to point out that there's testicle physics in Red Dead 2.
Here's the problem with Red Dead. Okay, I'll play it, but it's not going to be on PC.
I'll play it when it comes out on PC.
We don't even know if it's going to come out on PC.
Yeah, they said it was gonna. Just not yet.
Yeah, well, there's no reason why it wouldn't.
Look at the success of GTA. There's no reason not to put it out on PC eventually.
Game comes out in October. We're going to be busy with all kinds of shit.
Yeah. I never played the first one. No, that's a lie. I played the first one for about an hour.
First one
wasn't a huge fan.
Story's pretty good.
Well, I mean, I just don't really like Rockstar games. Like, I like GTA 5, but that's the first GTA game I actually was able to play all the way through.
Well, okay, so granted, comparative to GTA, it's a whole nother ball game because GTA has the allure of cars and things like that. I think. Well,
I think I'm just not accustomed to like Rockstar's system. So playing like Bully or playing Red Dead, I can never play more than an hour because they're just always throwing information at you, like just in the top left corner. And it's overwhelming. And I'm like, I don't have the willpower to commit to this.
I understand that. Well, if you look at Grand Theft Auto 5, the real draw to that is the story's actually interesting.
Yeah.
Bouncing around between characters. That's something they never really had until Grand Theft Auto 5, which is why Red Dead Redemption 2 is probably going to be just as great.
And the older GTA games never really played story, well.
And the old GTA games had decent stories. RDR1 had a really great story, and like you said, it's just overwhelming because there's so much to do. It plays like an RPG where you got a long ways to go before you get to the end game, and
which, I mean, it's not just that there's too much to do. It's that if you're not used to how Rockstar presents this information to you, or kind of like the pattern they use,
well, let me spoil.
It's got to draw you in and like immediately to get you to commit to learning all that stuff.
So spoilers up here for Red Dead Redemption 1. If you've never played it, go play it if you plan on it. Real quick on the gameplay, I never really liked cowboy shit, and then I played Resident Evil 1, and it got me kind of into the whole Western thing. It was actually really cool.
Resident Evil 1?
No, did I say Resident Evil? Sorry, Red Dead Redemption. Sorry, we were on
Resident Evil. I know, you're hype. It's fine.
We were on it for so long. Red Dead Redemption 1, and I never was really into that kind of stuff. And then I hit that, and I think the gunplay's good in that game. I really like using like revolvers and shit. It doesn't feel gimped. You use a rifle and all that. The gameplay isn't that great. It's kind of old and buggy and not super well done. But the story is actually really good. Not in the beginning. In the beginning, you don't really understand what's going on. You play John Marston, who used to be an outlaw that ran in a gang. The gang was kind of taken over by some other guy that used to run with you. You start off, you're being commissioned by the government, the feds specifically. I don't know what group they're with. They just call them the Feds in
U.S. Marshals.
God damn it! What's the name of the developer? Fucking why am I blanking on the developer's name right now? Their games typically have like feds. They don't say like what they are. You know, in Grand Theft Auto, it's the feds.
FIB.
FIB, but they still just call them feds. Yeah. In this game, you're gonna go to jail or some shit or prison if you don't do some shit, right? They want you to do some shit, but you play John Marston who wants to get out of that. Like he married a whore. Like it's one of those situations. Like it's some whore that he used to see all the time when he would go into a town, and he took her away from that and rescued her from that with his, the money he had from shit, and he built a ranch house somewhere. And it's back in the West where you could just go out somewhere and say, "This is mine," and just build a ranch house and whatever. So he builds this ranch house, and he's got a son, and his son's like a teen, like an early teen, like a 13-year-old or 14-year-old, something like that. Not even really that old. This is back when you hit 13, you became a man by doing a thing, and you were pretty much, for all accounts, a fucking adult. And you had 15-year-old cowboys going around doing adult shit and having jobs and all that shit. It wasn't like today where it's like 18. So you got
chances are you'd be dead by 18 in the Wild West.
Yeah, you had a kid that's like maybe 10 or 11, and you got this wife that used to be a whore, and then there's this older guy. I don't know what the relation is. Maybe he's an uncle or something, but y'all live at this ranch he has, and the government comes to you and is like, yeah, you want to keep having this life? We know who you are. We know what you did. If you want to keep this life going, which he wants to be out of the whole criminal business, we want you to do a thing for us. So they kind of commission him. They don't really deputize him or anything, but they commissioned him to go after his old gang members. So he goes down into, I think it's Mexico. I'm not sure. It might be on the border because the game map does have it's kind of like southern Texas area, and then there's a river, and on the other side of the river is Mexico. So the game takes place in two locations like that. You get shot by the gang member in just the worst, stupidest fucking way ever. He literally just walks up to the front gate of this fort, this Mexican-looking fort, and the guy talks to him on the wall and then ended up shooting him. You recover from it, and you have to do all this stuff leading up to eventually going and finding this guy and killing him. When you kill him, and this is the story, it actually starts to get really good. When you kill him, the feds betray you. They come to your ranch that you're now supposed to just be out of the game. They come to your ranch with a large force of feds. You end up having to fight them off for quite a bit. You end up in the barn with your wife and son, and they get the barn surrounded. So he has his wife and son sneak out the back and ride off, and he's going to distract them while he does it. You walk, and now the game has this system in it called Deadeye, where it this meter fills up as you kill people or shoot people and shit, and you can activate it, and it slows down time, and you kind of put your crosshairs over things, and it marks up targets up to as many bullets as you have in the gun. So you walk out of this place, and you're surrounded by with 20 to 30 feds. And he walks out, and he's, he knows that he's going to die. And you get this moment where Deadeye activates, and you pop off, and you kill about maybe 10 to 15 dudes or something like that, or like maybe 8 to 10, depending on what gun you're using at that point in the game. Because you can get up to some of the guns that have 8 to 10 rounds in them and shit, some of the experimental weapons of the time. And then you die. You die. John Marston is killed. But the game continues. That's the end of the game. The credits roll and everything. But just like all GTA game, the game continues. But you don't come back as John Marston. It cuts to his son at the grave where the father was at, and the mother's grave is right next to it, and the mother has just died, and the son is grown into a teenager. And you continue the game from that point as the son to wrap up anything you want to do. And you wear the same outfits. The animations are the same, but it's clearly his son. It's voice acted by the guy that plays the son. And you can actually, there's another mission you can do that's kind of a hidden mission where you can track down the federal guys, the two guys that were in charge of the Fed at the time, and kill his ass. You can forgive him or you can kill him. And he's down in Mexico somewhere or some shit, living.
So who do you play as in the second game? You playing as the son?
You're playing as a different guy completely. You're playing, but I think it's some time has passed. So John Marston is probably going to have a little Easter egg or something. But one of the cool aspects is they actually released DLC for Red Dead Redemption, where it's apocalyptic end time zombie shit. Okay, it's great. It's zombies, right? It's fucking amazing. So there's like it completely changes the game. All the areas that you've been to, there are people there trying to survive, and there's like zombies roaming out in the wilderness, and all these quests and shit that you have to do where you defend towns and help them and shit. And there's actually like apocalyptic horses, because horses are the mode of travel. One of the aspects of it is you can find the 4 horses of the apocalypse. You can hunt them down and tame them. And the game has like a taming system where you approach a horse and you lasso it, and then you hold on to it, you jump off your horse, jump onto it, and then you have to tame it, and then it's yours. You do this for the apocalyptic horses too, and they all have like special abilities and shit. And one of them's like the fastest one, and one of them's like got a lot of health and does a lot of damage when you trample people and shit. So there's a lot of cool shit, but you don't play as the son. You play as John Marston, but you don't play as John Marston. He's a zombie. The beginning of the DLC starts with showing the 2 graves, and it's like in the future beyond his kid being there, like, and he crawls out of the grave, and you play as zombie John Marston. He doesn't even have lines. Yeah. You don't talk to people. It's fucking great, man. It's really well done. They did a great job. Like John Marston comes back from the grave to save the world from the apocalypse. It's fucking
Was he a special
great.
zombie? Or all the other zombies? Are they sentient, or are they just like actual brain dead zombies?
I think they have a couple types of zombies. There's a lot of brain dead zombies, but I think there might be like 1 or 2 variants, like spit shit or something. I don't know. Like, because they wanted to have ranged enemies still be a threat because you're using guns, right?
Yeah.
But most of them are just on foot, and they're running zombies. It's really well done. I don't think I ever finished the DLC, but it's actually really good. It's actually really well done.
Yeah, so, I kind of hope it comes out on PC.
Well, Red Dead 1 will never come to PC, unfortunately, because the game was apparently a buggy fucking mess. Maybe they'll remake it one day, but I hope RDR2 is just as good. They're talking it's definitely got some of the aspects of it. There's like animal hunting and shit. It does have a cool little thing to it that most GTA games don't have, which is in RDR1 you kind of in Red Dead Redemption you have like pouches which allow you to carry stuff like more money, or kind of like what game does that? I'm trying to think of a game that does that, where you kind of have to increase. I guess Far Cry, it's got like that Far Cry type system where you have pouches that carry money and things like that, and you have to increase the capacity on those, and you do that by hunting animals in Red Dead Redemption. And of course it goes all the way up to legendary animals that you hunt that are you hunt Bigfoot in Red Dead Redemption 1. It's a quest line. You actually hunt down a Bigfoot and you can kill it. And I think it even talks to you. It's like tries to be sentimental or something. It's like it's crazy. There's a lot of funny shit there. Chupacabra, you hunt down Chupacabra, all kinds of cool shit like that. So I hope they bring more stuff like that in RDR2, and it's not too serious, But it looks really cool. That some of the systems they're describing. Rockstar is one of those companies that they may be scumbags when it comes to trying to make money for their game, but they do a lot of innovative things with their games.
Yeah.
The systems in that sound really interesting, with like the kind of a nemesis system with the other outlaws and shit. I hope you play as an outlaw in this game the whole way through, and there's no like, hey, you're a cop. Like too many games do that shit where, well, we don't want people playing as villains. We don't want to glorify that. Fuck that. Every GTA game you play is like a criminal. In RDR1, you were an ex-criminal that was trying to go straight. I want RDR2 to be you're a fucking gang leader, and I want that to be incorporated throughout the whole game. They do have a thing where you can build up like your camp or something like that. Like you have a camp, like you and your boys camp. I really hope that's a thing where you're always rolling with a gang, and you have to deal with like people trying to like maybe recruiting new people or people trying to overthrow you or shit like that. That would be really cool. They did have a dueling system in RDR1, which is going to be back in RDR2, and gonna be cool.
Yeah. So PC release is to be determined, but that'll be good because usually they'll release it with all the DLC and it'll be good. We'll just play
They'll
it all the way
release it
through.
with a first-person mode to force you to have to buy it again.
All right, well, that's longer than I wanted to spend on Red Dead, but that's enlightening. It sounds like a cool game. I kind of wish I had stuck with it back when I was playing it on 360, but whatever.
Yeah, well,
Too
it
late
is what
now.
it is. Yeah.
So real quick, this week in WoW, there wasn't a whole lot going on. There was that developer Q&A that sucked. Basically, it was a cop-out like, hey, we realize that there are some downsides to Azerite powers, and man, it's a downer. Anyway, and that was it. That was basically it. They're going to fix what they can, not give a shit about the rest, and fuck you. There's a hot fix next Tuesday that are doing 5% damage here, negative 5% damage there, and fire mages apparently are fine. So, fuck me.
Well, they're giving fire mages 5% damage.
Yeah, that's not the problem.
That's just not enough. It's not enough. It's really. They need to do more.
Apparently,
one thing I can tell you is that this coming looks pretty bland. There's not a lot in it.
Unless you raid. Enjoy the new raid. But what was the thing about island expeditions? Like, yeah, okay, so island expeditions, people have finally figured out how to get loot from it, and it's by losing.
Yeah.
Like, if you go in and kill as many named rares as possible, you increase your chances of getting like mounts and loot and all this stuff. But by doing that, you don't get enough Azerite to win the match. But it doesn't matter, because if you, let's say you're playing on normal, right, and you get 5,000 Azerite and the other team wins with 6,000, you still get to keep that 5,000. At least it contributes towards your weekly thing. But if you're still out there and you think that Blizzard knows what they're doing in terms of game development, look at Island Expeditions. There's two things with different rewards, and they're completely at odds with each other.
Yeah, they're really dropping the ball right now. Like, I think that one of the biggest issues they're having is this kind of excuse making that they're doing. It's just not a good idea. I don't think Ian's going to be at the top for long if this keeps up.
Well, I mean, it's really going to be judged by how much money the expansion makes. So
well,
even if it sucks and it still makes money, then
I was
that's
in the camp of people that when I heard Battle for Azeroth, you know, you have Legion, and I knew that we had to be doing something interesting, and then they do this Battle for Azeroth thing. Granted, now, okay, it's fine because it's, you know, it's one of those things where just a front for an old god expansion, but the systems in this game sounded pretty boring in the beginning.
Yeah, and then they reassured everyone that they wouldn't be.
Reassured they wouldn't be, and it's wrong. It's just fucking wrong.
I mean, I wasn't hyped at all from the beginning because I knew it was going to be PvP focused, and it still is, even though you can do PvP type things as a PvE kind of thing. The PvE isn't great. Warfronts aren't great. Island expeditions aren't great. So really all that's left is what's always been there. Fucking questing and raiding and dungeons. Which I'm okay with, but now there's really no point to doing them because the gear that you get really isn't... I mean, there's a point to raiding if you're into that and you know that many people. But, God, after that one raid with Billy's Guild, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that again.
Well, it's just not fun. I don't understand it. People... Like, I've been raiding in this video game for 15 fucking years. It's the same thing over and over. There's no new mechanics in these games, hardly ever. It's usually recycled mechanics over the past 15 fucking years. And it's just the same thing. You go into a dungeon. It's just like a dungeon, but it's bigger with more people. You fight a boss for like 6 fucking minutes.
It sucks as a caster because you're constantly worried about moving.
It's just boring. It's so fucking boring. It's like how you're hitting the same fucking 3 abilities over and over and over for 5 minutes on the same creature that does the same 3 abilities in a rotational effect, or and the phase change, so 1 ability changes or 2 ability changes, and what happens at the end, you may or may not get a loot drop, and then you do this for several hours going through this shit. It's fucking pathetic. that they have not figured out a better system. You know what the shame is they've found better systems. Things like war fronts and island expeditions are better systems to
Mythic
get loot.
Pluses.
Mythic Plus, yeah, it's a Mythic Plus should just be the raid replacement. There shouldn't be raids anymore. It should just be Mythic Plus.
I know there's people who like raiding. I mean, you can keep raiding, but make Mythic Plus have
you can have
just as reliable
equivalent
gear.
You can have world bosses and shit. Now, I feel like they shouldn't do. I feel like raids should go away in the effect they are, or at least cycle them to something else. Like every patch having a raid that's the same shit from previous systems. I don't know how people do it. I can't wait to raid. Yeah, you can't wait to play the same thing you've been playing over and over. Like there's nothing new about it. There's nothing new. It's just looks and shit. Like how interesting would it be if the new raid was the Warfront? Like talk about the next raid that's coming in the next patch is going to be like something never before where you're fighting the other faction. Well, that's not true. It's going to be just like a raid. It's just fucking faction NPCs and faction bosses. That's all it's going to be. Now, imagine, however, that the next raid is the Warfront. Like, you go in with a pre-made group, or you have the Raid Finder version, which is what we currently have, or you go in with a pre-made group and it's difficult, and you have to actually work together to get resources and defend the keep. Not this Zerg bullshit like we have right now where it feels like a Raid Finder thing where people are just off doing whatever they want, but an actual thing where you have to coordinate and defend the walls from attacks. And they could put more effort into it because they're not building a fucking raid.
In an ideal world, that would be more fun. But realistically, people are going to want to do it, and they don't know enough people to do it with people they know. So it's going to be a fucking shit show because you won't be able to.
It would just be like a raid, and you'd have the Raid Finder version and then other versions that are more difficult. You can have a raid boss that pops up in one area, and you have to go to feed them. You know, like each tier is separated by a raid boss for pushing into the enemy's territory. And maybe they have like a couple raid bosses that assault the location like that. That could work. They could do that absolutely. And Warfronts feel almost like it was supposed to be something like that, but they just didn't go through with it. But then they were like, well, let's recycle this into a system in the game, and they could absolutely do something like that. And each boss has a chance to drop something in the last, and then you don't have to have this fucking bullshit where it's the same mechanics because. You know, most of the raid is instead of clearing trash, you're dealing with respawning enemies and waves of enemies and shit like that. Like,
I mean, honestly, I kind of hate myself for still playing this game because I feel like I'm going against my principles, but I feel the need to play because I'm like, I got to grind out that rep, and I'm just like, why? Why do I need to do that? It's like, well, I want to get that gear, but why? So I can do the stuff I'm already doing, but easier.
Well.
Because I feel like I'm missing out if I'm not playing it. That's a bad spot to be in.
Yeah, it's kind of
it's just not rewarding anymore. I mean,
that's the real issue. It doesn't feel rewarding at all. Nothing about it feels like you're getting anything from it when you complete something. Even if you get a piece of gear, it's like it doesn't feel like the investment was worth it. Mythic, when we did Mythic and Mythic Plus in dungeons in Legion, it felt great. It felt good. You were with a small group of people that you enjoyed. You didn't feel like you were, you came through to like it wasn't something where like you're competing against 10 to 15 other DPS people just to get on a fucking meter in the top 10. Like you feel like you're actually contributing and making a difference in these AoE pools or like the bosses, and it's arguably more difficult because there's less people and there's no second healer to pick up the slack of the first healer or something. It felt great. It felt good. And that's what this game should be about. And raids should dissipate and really become mythic dungeons. And then you can have your large scale things be war fronts that have varying difficulty levels and give you loot. And we can stop with this raid nonsense where they're trying to come up with like different mechanics and have like these bosses that
look. I'm okay with raids being an option for people. I just don't think that should be the end goal for everyone. I think you should be able to get all that loot in different ways if you don't like or don't want to raid.
Well, we both agree on that.
I never want to, if people like raiding genuinely, I don't want to take that away from them, but at the same time I don't really fucking like raiding, and that's the only way you're gonna get all that fucking gear that you want. And that's really why you play the game, right? You don't even know
Yeah.
why. You're just compelled to get more gear. And they make it so fucking hard. They fucking drip feed it to you. And they're like, if you want this gear, you're going to do it this way, or you can go fuck yourself. Which I don't agree with.
Yeah. Well, I hate to do this to you, but I got to run. I got
Already?
an appointment at 5.
Well, it's 5.
Yeah.
So you're going to be late.
Well, I mean, I got an appointment with the lady that lives across the street. That's our real estate agent.
Okay. Well, that's all we really had to talk about today anyway. So I'm Seeker127. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Seeker127. Also on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff. And who are you again?
Oh, the Gabbler. I got Twitter. I don't tweet on there, though. I just follow people. But, maybe one day I'll start tweeting about going live on my stream. Maybe next time I stream on Tuesday at twitch.tv/the Gabbler, where nobody comes to watch because I don't know why.
Hey,
I mean, I have this great
between the
system
two
where
of
when I'm
us,
AFK,
you guys will never find a better Twitch channel with fewer viewers.
Yeah,
We're great.
We're playing the golf strategy right now. The fewest the better. I'm telling you right now, I'm winning. Seeker is losing. Okay, he is losing to me right now.
I'm 5 over par on average.
Yeah.
You're dead even.
Fucking hole in one every time. All right. Well,
That's it. Well, we'll be back next Sunday for more podcasting. You can find us streaming starting again this Tuesday. Sunday and Mondays are the day off. So Tuesday through Saturday. Probably a little bit of WoW this week. Some more Divinity Original Sin 2. And what else?
Might be well, when we finish Divinity, we're getting into we're starting Horror Month with
Right, Horror Month. Evil Within 2.
Evil Within 2.
Neither of us have played that yet, so it'll be an experience. Stop by.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
See you.
Later.